everybody. John Corcoran here with the Right Choice 2023 slate. I'm joined today by Don Sorrentino, and today we plan to discuss some current news regarding letters of agreement and the reduction of the Amazon flying that we're all hearing about. Don, how are you today?
I'm great, John. Thanks for having me on.
Okay, well, Don, we have an LOA that got when an arbitrator award that got mentioned in the newswire recently regarding the long-term disability.
Yeah.
Why don't you go ahead and start off on that?
Okay. Sounds good. So, in the latest 2750 news email that came out, it had a lot of discussion on the reduction in positions, but a paragraph in there stated that they got the Dana Eischen arbitrated award for our long-term disability premiums. I'd like to just cover a little bit of history on that, just to refresh everybody's memory on what this was and how it went down. So originally, after the contract was signed in September of 21, the negotiators went back to the arbitrator with some LOA suggestions, and they got like the first year pay, they got catastrophic sick leave, they got an additional 2% direct contribution. And one of the sections they got was our long term disability was plussed up from only 2 years of disability to up to FAA retirement age of 65, which it is right now. And essentially, the language that was installed in our contract is in Article 27, Paragraph C. And it talks very specifically about the premium shall be paid by the company. Well, on July 29th of 2022, when the executive board sent out a newswire informing us all that the company is charging us this premium, then imputing it as income to the crew member, and then the crew member is responsible for the tax on that income. Well, they explain in that July 29th newswire that that wasn't the spirit of the language, and it was supposed to be at no cost to the crew member, including the imputed section of the tax. Well, if you read Article 27C, it very specifically says in there that the premiums shall be imputed as income to the crew member. For whatever reason, the negotiators thought that they were going to be able to get a gross up in our income to cover that imputed tax. And for a captain who's on the higher income level, this is probably about $6,000 a year it's costing the crew members. So it's a pretty decent amount of tax for the year for sure. Well, in fast forward a year later, they filed a grievance back in July of 22. The grievance went straight to arbitration because the company and the executive board couldn't come to an agreement. So then in June 24th of 23, in Newswire number 163, Dana Eischen, arbitrator Dana Eischen, who was the arbitrator who oversaw these LOAs when they were negotiated, he held the arbitration for the disagreement between the company and the executive board. Well, just this week in the email, the arbitrator came out with their award 1 year later. I am very surprised that this arbitrator's award took an entire year to be finalized and the verdict read to us. I'm very surprised that it would take a year. But the interesting thing is that the arbitrator sided with the company. Well, of course they sided with the company. There's no language anywhere in our contract that says anything about any compensation that the company could give us in order to cover this tax. So if the LOA, which was installed right into 27C of the contract, does not say anything about the tax being covered by the company. It says that we will be taxed on it. And there's nothing in Article 3, the compensation sections, that says we're going to be plussed up. Of course, the negotiator agreed with the company and not us. I mean, there's no language anywhere that supports the executive board's position. And they said, unfortunately, this was the verdict of the arbitrator. Well, no, this was the correct verdict because of poor contract negotiations. If it was negotiated the way you guys said it was, we would have been in. It would have been in our favor, but it wasn't. It's just demonizing and victimizing other people for your own mistakes. And I think everybody should be aware of how these things actually evolve, because it does take a long time. I mean, this is a 3-year deal. Of course, most of us don't even remember, or maybe some of us weren't even here back then.
Yeah, agreed. Well, agreed. And I want to just kind of cover a couple things that you already did. In September 9th of 2021 is when we actually received the arbitrator's award. And if anyone that was here remembers, they then told us that this was not the contract. It was just going to be the basis in which the contract language would be created. The contract didn't even become available to us until 22. And it was March, I think, of 22 is when we got the CBA that's all in our iPads now. So the December 24th of 21, we got an email, we got a newswire that stated, shortly after the arbitrator returned the award, the company approached the union to better the compensation and benefits. And the increased benefits or increased changes were the new hire pay of approximately $6,000 a month, the long-term disability policy to age 65, and the 2% defined contribution. And all of those were items that they wanted to give us in exchange for wiping out the one thing that the arbitrator did give us, and that was the catastrophic sick bank payout. And the catastrophic sick bank payout meant that if you retired with 1,000 days in your account, that had a cash value equal to 50%. And there were many pilots here that had somewhere around $200,000-$300,000 waiting for them on retirement, but they went ahead and LOA'd that out, and we never got a chance to vote on that. And what they said, and what they've continued to say, is that was something that they had to go back to arbitrator Eischen and get him to include it in his award. And that's an important piece right there. Include it in his award. Well, when he gave his award on September 9th, he said, "Here is what you asked me to do. I have made the decisions." And one of those decisions was to value the catastrophic sick bank equal to 50% in cash value. So therefore, he did not need to be brought back into it. He had already, in his award letter that we can put on our website, it says, "Here's my award. You are free to do with it whatever you want, including negotiate from here on out." And that award was ours. It was the equivalent of just like the contract is ours. So any changes required that are made to that contract require a vote. And we did not get a chance to vote on that. It was done for us. So is there anything else that you wanted to add?
No. I agree. I agree with you, and it's one of those things that's so frustrating that we consistently say that we need to have the ability to ratify our own changes, and we need to have the ability to submit demands, and we need to have proposals brought to us. When was the last time you heard anybody from the executive board in any of this communication that they give us? We will negotiate and bring you proposals. They don't bring us proposals. They bring us like finalized negotiating language. Do you want to vote yes or no on it? You know what I mean? It's not even brought to us in a proposal. It's brought to us like salespeople, like that we should take it.
Well, it's just like the LOA, the one and only LOA we've ever voted on back in October for the 12-14-16 retirement and the 12-50 international travel. That was we were told many different things, one of which is this is a take it or leave it offer. And we were led to believe that it was the best thing that we could do because it was the first time ever a mid-contract enhancement had occurred. And if we turn it down, they may not offer it again. Well, that may be the case. There's a chance that they would have never offered it again. But they're circumventing the actual process of wanting to know from us what our demands are, and then getting with the company negotiators to come up with a proposal. And then once that proposal is finalized, then the proposal comes back, and then we're given an opportunity to discuss it amongst ourselves. Is this a proposal that's worth ratifying? And once we ratify it, then that's when it becomes a letter of agreement. So the statement that they made in the Newswire just a couple days ago that we're busy negotiating a letter of agreement that will require an expedited voting process, that is actually not what's supposed to happen. And especially the one that we're about to get into that I'll talk about here in a little bit, expedited. I disagree with it. This should be expedited. So I think we've covered enough on that, unless there's something else you wanted to add.
No, John, but yeah, I think it totally leads us into this next section talking about the position notice. So go ahead.
Okay, so the position notice, as everyone knows, we're not going to be flying for Amazon anymore. And they've told us that they're going to be drawing down 17 7.6s and 8 7.3s. So if you recall, company email, June 1st, Scott Lindsay, and it was titled a position notice. And it announces that there is going to be 35 captain reductions on the 7.6 and 60 reductions of first officers. And then it shows that there is 82 available vacancies as 7.4 FO in Anchorage, and there's 40 777 FOs available in LAX. We were then encouraged to make sure that our standing bid was all everything we wanted. And then the next email we got was on June 7th, announcing that there was going to be a delay and that there would be follow-up, expect to be later today. And in fact, a follow-up did show up, and it said that we knew, or I know many of you are anxiously awaiting a release of the preliminary award. A further update will occur tomorrow. Well, that tomorrow showed up June 8th, and it states that they are opting to cancel the position notice per Article 24E1. There's a big paragraph with about 10 sentences in the middle, and it closes out with, "Be assured we are working closely with the union leadership to address the pending staffing adjustments. More information about future displacement awards will be forthcoming." Okay, so that's the company's position, is the position notice is no longer an issue. So anybody on the 7.6 can just rest assured nothing is changing. Well, then we got an email from the union, and it states, I'm having to pull it up right now. It was a special update, and it talks about how they've gone ahead and canceled the position notice, and that they are currently engaged in negotiation for a letter of agreement. And it says it's important to note that time is of the essence with this potential deal, and we'll need to plan for an expedited voting window in order to minimize the negative impact some of our crew members will be facing. It also states that there's going to be displacements of captains and furloughs. Well, if we refer back to the original position notice, there was 100, help me remember this, Don, it was 120.
122 vacancies and 95 reductions.
Yeah. So there is no potential furlough with this position notice at all. So nobody needs to worry about that the next LOA is going to prevent you from losing your job.
Right.
Because there's more vacancies, there's more seats available than the positions that they're needing to eliminate.
Correct.
Okay, but there is a potential for captains to get displaced. And that's because we have
Bumping rights.
have only they have bumping rights, but we've been told that there is 8 aircraft inbound, 4 777s, 4 74s. Each of those aircraft require 10 captains, so that's a total of 80 captain seats. And the total of the captains was 35. So that means that there's because we haven't received the aircraft yet, 35 captains could go to the 74 or the 777. So if you have just recently been upgraded, there is a chance that you could find out that you are going to be downgraded back to FO. And then when this whole process is over, there's a total of 250 captains that are going to be needing seats, and there's only 80 captain seats that are due to replace these 76s and 73s with the 74 and the 777.
Yeah.
So something happened, and that's what we're talking about right now. Something happened to cause the delay of the preliminary award, and then the cancellation of the preliminary award. So what I think is a very real possibility is that the 76 crews that were told that they needed to make sure that that they were going to be reduced. Is it possible that they bid for the 73? Because if you look at the position notice, there is a 73 upgrade training class and a transition class. And if they placed 73 as their second choice, because of course there's 11 76s that are still going to be remaining here, 11 76 aircraft that are going to remain. So it would be easy to assume that your first choice as a 76 crew member would be to remain on there. So your first choice would be 76, but it's possible that the second choice was 73. And that's what the problem is. Because when Scott Lindsay found out what the award was going to be before he announced it, he probably called up Scott Ridgway and said, we have a situation. We have 35 people that want to go to the 7-3. The next call that got made was Scott Ridgway to the director of training, Joe Masson. And then the question probably was, is our 7-3 training program capable of accepting in this many crew members? We could only guess that the answer was no. And the reason we can guess that is because they canceled the position notice. So the situation that I believe is happening in front of them is they do not want to go through the expense of training a 7-3 crew for that crew to only be able to serve for 4, 5, 6 months, to then have to be displaced off of that aircraft and go to 777 or 74. So let's run through the numbers on that.
Yeah, well,
Go ahead.
I got to get my calculator out for this one, but all right, go ahead.
Okay. All right. Well, there's what is it, 24G in our contract states that your pay will not change until you've reached OE or completed OE or 120 days, whichever happens first.
You are correct with
So,
that, and I'd like to highlight that that is a concessionary language from what we had before this contract was signed.
oh, that's right, because the rate of pay was supposed to occur as soon as we entered into the training program.
Well, yeah, there was a grievance filed back in 2016 about a change in status, and your change in pay would start on day one of class because that was the way they had done it. So the company honored it. So, I mean, in essence, about 480 guys probably would have been able to get the higher pay on day one of class going to the 7.4, the 777. But I digress, and I don't mean to take away from you. So go ahead.
Well, yeah, but actually, I mean, it's a very interesting point because in this particular instance, it's to the advantage of the 7.6 crew member because if in fact they are bidding to go to 7.3, per the current language, they will maintain their current rate of pay until after training or 120 days. Well, the 7.6 pay structure is higher than the 7.3. So take a typical captain, and 300 is an easy number to work with. $300 an hour captain getting 64 hours min guarantee during training is approximately $20,000. And $20,000 times approximately 5 months of going through the training process is $100,000. Do the math on the first officer and just make it easy and split it in half. That first officer is going to end up getting $50,000 during that same period of time. Then you have to include the cost of the training itself because the simulators and the instructors and the OE and all of that. You're looking at about $150,000 for a captain and probably $100,000 for an FO. That means that you've got 80 captains and 80 FOs over on the 7.3 side of the house. So therefore, you've got $12 million of cost to make 80 captains, and you have about $6 million to do the same for first officers for a total of $18 million. So I think the problem that they realized was we are potentially exposed to having to spend nearly $20 million to train 160 crew members that are only going to serve for 3, 4, 5 months. That is not an expense they want to have.
No,
So
and then those crew members would have to go back to training and be another 3 or 4 months where they're not making any money for the company.
exactly. So probably what they're trying to do as far as the complexity, to quote the Newswire, the complexity of this agreement is they're probably going to want to put a fence around the 7.3 saying you can bid 7.4 or 777, but you cannot bid the 7.3. And then that way it avoids this unnecessary $18 to $20 million worth of training costs. And then it will also lock the 7.3 guys. It'll save their jobs as they know them today through till June of next year when they decide that the 7.3 is going to go away.
Yeah.
And that will save the company, we'll say $20 million. And so they're going to try and letter of agreement that out. Okay, well, what I say to that is, if you're going to spend $20 million if we do not sign a letter of agreement. And that provided that all the crew decide to go ahead and force this issue. So why don't we negotiate to better utilize that 20 million and spend it to make sure that if you are currently today a 777 captain or a 7.4 captain that just recently upgraded, your position is safe. And any transition from the 7.6 to go to the 2 other fleets, that will be considered a temporary overstaffing. So as you know, each aircraft is crewed with approximately 10 captains and 20 FOs. So then they would just agree that for a temporary period, it would have a higher amount than 10 per aircraft. And then there would be a higher amount of first officers. Now, going back to the amount of pilots that are going to be leaving both fleets, you have 25 aircraft leaving. There's approximately 20 on each aircraft, so therefore there's 500 crew members that are going to be needing to move somewhere during the next 12 months. We have 8 aircraft inbound that require 10 captains and 20 FOs each. So therefore, that's a total of 30. That means there's 240 seats due to arrive within the next year. So that means that we have a 260 pilot overage. However, we cannot forget that for the last 3 years, we've been pacing at 30 to 50 per month of resignations. So as far as overstaffing goes, I see no reason why all of a sudden it's going to drop to zero. So the standard resignation balance, or the amount of resignations per month, is going to self-correct the potential overage. So I think really what's in front of us is how do we as a 3,000 member group decide to vote yes or no on the letter of agreement? And the letter of agreement that comes out is going to have language that protects every captain that's currently sitting in a 777 or a 74. They will remain a captain. What do you say to that?
I mean, I think it's a reasonable proposal. I think no matter how you do the math, this shuffle is going to cost Atlas a shit ton of money in training, and you're going to lose a lot of productivity out of all these people that are going to be in the training center. And let's face it, our training center could barely keep up with the training it was doing. I mean, obviously, we're not going to have as many new hire classes coming through, so it can handle a little bit more. But still, it's going to be really hard pressed. And, you know, the number of check airmen we have, the time it takes to get OE completed, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of leverage there to be used. And I think that your suggestion with fences and protecting and overstaffing is definitely a reasonable way to go. And through attrition and new aircraft and new contracts coming, it'll definitely balance out.
Well, the other thing to consider here is that we also the 7-3 crews, with there being a fence put around them, the 7-3 crews are going to have to be considered too, because their fleet is going away as of June, and they're going to be towing the line, as they say, to keep the 7-3 program flying. So I think that what would the another fair thing that needs to be included in this letter of agreement is that it's projected that they are eventually going to end up in either a 777 or a 74, either as a first officer or a captain, whatever their seniority is going to be able to hold. And as we all know, the 7-3 is the fastest way to get to a captain's seat. So there are some 7-3 captains that may have to go to a first officer seat, but I don't think there's any way that you can allow a 7-3 captain to have their seat position frozen, or I should say guaranteed, in either of the two remaining fleets, because now you're walking over seniority. And I think that that's just one of the things that people are going to have to accept, is that there will be some changes of position when this is all completed. But for the interim time right now, those 7-3 pilots need to be paid at the rate of pay that they will receive in either the 777 or the 74. And that money would come from the savings of not having 20-some million worth of unnecessary training. And then the other comment I wanted to make about the 7-3 program is that in order to facilitate training all of these pilots that are coming off of the 7.6, we've got a total of 170 captains and 170 FOs that are coming off those aircraft, and we have 80 positions in each seat on the 7.3. Just kind of doing a little out loud thinking here. To create 80 captains and 80 FOs, what is the capability of the 7.3 training program? What is a 7.3 class? Is whenever I've seen announcements, it's what is it, like 13, or I guess it would be an even number, like 14. We're talking about training 7.3s for the next 6 months straight, and then we're going to be on into 25, and the aircraft's due to go away in June. So this is a plan designed to fail unless an LOA is reached, and that LOA is going to require our ratification. And in order for us to ratify it, we're going to have to see some benefits. It can't just be a one-sided agreement.
That's right. And it should be a proposal to us. Let's see a proposal. I do not want to see, 5 different things all tied to one yes or no answer, right? Because, we may agree with 1 or 2 of the items, but not the third item. You know what I mean? If we don't have, and we need a chance to thoroughly digest it. This should not be anything that we have to do quickly. It needs to be expedited because, quite frankly, that's how you make mistakes. And we've seen how these, ready, fire, aim mistakes, how they hit us in the long run. I mean, we did not come up with this. This was Atlas Air and the C-suite and Apollo. This was their brainchild. They came up with this. They could have done something much less radical by eliminating, maybe 3 or 4 airframes off the 7.6 and maybe 3 or 4 7.3 by the end of the year, and then maybe phasing out a few more. I mean, I'm sure this isn't an extremely desirable agreement for Amazon either. I mean, 17 7.6s are going over to ATI. I don't know how in a million years they're going to train and staff that.
I agree. And, I've actually read a couple articles out there, Aero News and Freight Waves, and their opinion or what they're reporting is actually quite different than what we're being told. They're reporting that this was an Amazon directive to Atlas. Now, we all know that sometimes that just because it says so in an article doesn't mean it's true. But either way, this is an Atlas Air problem. It's not an Atlas crew member problem. So we can't allow their problem to become ours. So we need the time to be able to figure out what our rights are and what our position is and what our leverage is, and then utilize that leverage to the greatest extent to benefit us.
I agree with you, John. I agree. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see what comes out of this here in the next few days. Glad I had an opportunity to talk to you and review all this stuff because it gets really tedious to try to process and digest it and fully understand it. So I'm glad that you took the time to go through that. And thanks for having us.
One thing I want to add here is that there was a Flightline briefing recording, and I've mentioned this part of it already.
Oh yeah, I forgot about this one.
Yeah, well, there's 2 of them. There's a second Flightline briefing. The first one that came out that caught my ear was when Michael Steen stated, "This is not their union. I consider this to be my union," and that bothered me because that's not the case. Now, unless Michael Steen has foreclosed on our ownership of a union, then that would make sense. But that's not what's happened. It's our union. We pay the dues and we bargain for our rights and benefits. The second newswire or the Flightline briefing that came out, Doug McKean was saying all kinds of really nice things about how Chris Knox and Yngve Paulson are both putting a tremendous amount of effort into solving this problem. And he even went as far as saying, I've been doing this since 1985, and I've never seen anything like this before. Well, I remember back in the 80s and the 90s that unions were going out on strike. And when you had to deal with a union, you were dealing with a very powerful organization that was doing everything they could to stand up for the rights of the pilots. It appears that what has shifted is that what Doug McKean is so glad to see has changed is that it's a very social environment and everyone's getting along and we're just trying to make this airline continue flying. And I think there's a possibility that what's happening is that our current leadership has lost sight of who they actually represent, and that's us, not the company.
I have to agree with you, John. I think that, you have some incumbents in office that have been involved for a very, very, very long time. And I think it's really easy to get a myopic view when you're sitting in there for that long of a time. I mean, when was the last time these guys went out and flew 6 months, 7 months in a row on the line? They are detached. They do not know what life is like for us. Their life is very different than ours. And I think it's extremely hard for them to relate. And it's time for them to allow some new blood into office and allow for people with a fresh perspective and people that know what it's like out here to put your time in the mines.
I agree. I just got to say, actually, for full disclosure, yes, we are in a campaign, and we do want your vote. However, what we said is not just purely a political statement regarding all of these facts about this potential LOA that's coming our way. This is more or less everyone needs to process this information strictly on either passing the LOA or turning it down, because this is going to affect your terms and conditions and possibly your work life at Atlas Air. It isn't just because we're bringing it up and we're in a political campaign right now. So don't make the mistake that this is purely us saying vote for us. This is everyone needs to be aware of what's coming your way to make a decision that is going to leverage our position to the maximum that we can.
Yeah, I agree with you, John. It's, there's two sides to every story. And, when you're getting all your information from a single source, there's no way to really get a well-rounded education on what exactly is going on. And the crew members deserve that. They deserve to know exactly what's going on and have a fresh perspective to make informed decisions.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, well, I think we covered it all, and I appreciate your time, Don. And I'll see you out there, and everybody else, fly safe out there. We'll talk soon.
All right, bye-bye.